Everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I couldn't be more excited to be here with some of my industry friends, but also vets in the wealth tech space. So Allison, Phil, thanks so much for joining. As people are streaming in, it is March Madness. I'm sure Allison and Phil don't care, but I care. True Aztec at heart here. So in the chat, drop who you still have. How is your bracket going? I get to say this almost every year. I beat my husband by a ton of points, and this year is no different. So drop those predictions in the chat. How is your bracket going? Allison, Phil, do you guys have brackets going?
I am
Not
currently
good ones.
in 9th place out of
Okay.
like 22 people that did the asset map bracket. So I came in second, I think, last year, so it's a little disappointing, but you know how it goes. Like sometime in that middle section, it's like you still have a chance. So my final few teams are still kind of in the mix. How about you, Phil?
Probably better not mentioned. We've had better years in the past.
There was some big Cinderella stories in there, so I could see why a lot of brackets were busted. Teams went out early. But I love this time of year. It is like Christmas to me. I think
Tori,
it's
I'm
just so
fully
much
rooting
fun.
for the Aztecs.
I
Throughout.
appreciate that. Anyone else in the chat want to be on the bandwagon of Aztec Nation? We will gladly have you. All right. Well, looks like we have quite a few people in here, so I think we should get started. My name is Tori Hoppy. I am head of partnerships over at Holistiplan, and I am joined today by two wonderful companies in the space. We'll get to what they do and how we're all working together to create this really great concept for you guys. So I'm going to pass it quickly over to Phil to introduce himself, and we'll get started.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tori. And hello, everybody. My name is Phil Christ, Senior Vice President at VRGL. And other than looking at some of the different solutions here today, I wanted to just kind of kick us off and talk about, what we mean by thoughtful deliverables and kind of how we came to the topic of today's subject. And I think really what that starts with is a wave of personalization that we've seen across the industry. More and more advisors are trying to meet their clients where they are. And in order to do that, they have to become more adaptive and really more personalized in that approach. That personalization leads to, I would say, best of breed solutions like some of the ones we're going to talk about here today. But I thought that was a good kind of segue as we get into a little bit of description of both of Asset Map, Holistiplan, and VRGL today. We'll take a little bit of look, quick introduction, and then we'll do a little bit of behind the scenes and kind of a little deeper dive of each of those as the session progresses. So happy to kind of get us kickstarted here and talk a little bit about VRGL at first, and then we can go from there.
And
beautiful.
While we move, there we go.
Thank you, Tori. So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, let me give kind of a quick introduction of who VRGL is and what we are and kind of who we help serve from the wealth space. Really focused on financial advisors that are in that process of trying to acquire net new clients in that prospecting phase. And really delivering investment proposals as part of a workflow that we develop. We break that workflow down into 3 different segments that we call intake, educate, and generate. And really what we've done is tried to meet the market where we've seen financial advisors meeting their prospects. And so it starts really with that first conversation and getting to know new prospective clients. Maybe those have been through introductions. But ultimately, what we find that most advisors receive out of that first or second conversation are statements, financial statements from that prospect. And so being able to take those financial statements and allow a solution like VRGL to intake those and extract all that data off of those statements automatically rather than through that manual process is really where we're trying to help folks save time. And then from there, transition into this concept that we call educate, where an advisor can not only view and analyze the current portfolio of their prospect, but then also make a proposal. Maybe it's a proposed investment model that is unique to that advisor's firm, and then understanding the differences, comparing and contrasting the current portfolio versus new. And then once the advisor has done that, be able to generate a nice, clean, white labeled proposal, something that looks and feels institutional, but it is really easy to kind of navigate and develop and produce all in the same afternoon, walking through this workflow and being able to deliver that kind of final product to a prospect at the end of the day. So that's a quick introduction of VRGL. We'll get more into the application later, but I'll kick it over to you next.
Great. And then we have Allison Susko, head of community. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Over at Asset Map. So she's
got
going to kind of give us a quick overview of Asset Map, and then we can keep going.
Yeah, so great to be here with you today, especially my friends at VRGL and Holistiplan. And yeah, that's my role at Asset Map, Vice President of Community and Partnerships, really working on a lot of our vendor relationships and also our RIA and broker-dealer friends, and happy to take any questions as we get to the end. So save them up for all of us and let us know what you might want to learn more about as we wrap up here later in the webinar. But for those of you who are new to Asset Map, you can see at the top, let's turn a financial plan into a visual story. That really kind of tells what we're all about. Visualizing folks' households from either a client or a prospect perspective is pretty fantastic in the way that you can imagine opportunities are uncovered. The client feels like you're really getting to know them. And we feel like, that as Phil is kind of talking about prospecting and getting items together using VRGL, using Asset Map to get everything put together and talk a little bit about what is so important to all the family members, not just that main client, is really just great to then, uncover opportunities and potentially push to companies like VRGL and Holistiplan with, potential issues you might have uncovered using that Asset Map report. So we're going to talk a little bit later about kind of all the things we're discussing, how important branding can be, how important, kind of different scenarios can be that a client is going through. And of course, as our title says, also the deliverables and how important a takeaway is for a client at the end of that meeting and ongoing. So super excited to get more into Asset Map in a few minutes, but happy to be here. And I'm going to pass it back to you, Tori.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned, I'm Tori Hoppy, head of partnerships over here at Holistiplan. If you don't know who Holistiplan is, we are a tax planning solution software built for financial advisors by financial advisors. Our two founders are financial advisors that saw a need and a want in the space for tax planning. So we are quickly able to create a nice deliverable for you and your client to take home after you have that tax planning conversation with them. We know tax planning is a top priority for clients. Data is out there. I think the last one I saw was like 90-something% of clients are requesting tax planning, but only 25% of them are actually getting the planning that they need or want. So we've got a long way to go in this space to make sure that all clients are heard and all clients understand their tax planning needs. And that's where we kind of come in. But today, again, we want to talk about those really nice deliverables that you can use out of the three systems and how you can layer them on top of each other while you're going through this prospecting with clients and with your existing clients. So Phil, I'm going to let you kick it
Awesome.
off here.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think this is a really great visual before we dive a little bit more into each of our applications and each of our solutions that, with this, again, we'll go back to that wave of personalization. Really what personalization has led to over the last few years, I think, is best of breed solutions. And while best of breed solutions are fantastic, there needs to be a level of cohesion and a natural sense of workflow that I think kind of works between each of those. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to end up with potentially more items in our tech stack or more vendors or more relationships, it's imperative that those relationships and that those partners like ourselves can kind of work together in a simplistic but meaningful kind of workflow. And that's what I think we're going to probably still spend a little bit more time on talking through each of these. But as we think about the life cycle of where our clients are, where your clients are, prospective clients becoming new clients, becoming existing clients, and then potentially circulating back into reproposing existing clients over time. And so I think this workflow kind of demonstrates a bit of the life cycle that we're going to try and reinforce here. And so with that said, why don't we dive into a little bit of the VRGL application first, and I'll get us kicked off with some of the system. And here we go. So now that we are in kind of the landing page of VRGL, you'll actually see that a VRGL checklist is set up here. And we've got a fictitious client called Robert Herman. We can start at really any place, and that could be an individual, that could be a family, that could be a household. But ultimately, what we've designed the VRGL application to do, trying to walk advisors through that workflow of intaking, educating, and then generating an investment proposal, we've tried to design the application to kind of mimic those three workflows. And so you'll see that I've got step 1, step 2, and kind of step 3 here that are in line with that workflow that we looked at in the last slide. And really back to step 1 is, how do we get investment data from a prospective client into the application so that we, as the advisor, can start to understand what makes up that prospective client's current portfolio? Is it multiple accounts? Is it multiple different brokerages? Is it with potentially multiple advisors today? And really where we find is that most of our clients, the advisors themselves, ultimately end up, like I said earlier, with statements in hand, or when I say in hand, digital copies of statements. And so ultimately, VRGL tries to give advisors any different point in which they may be receiving those statements or those investments, and a place to put them into VRGL so that VRGL can go and start with the automatic extraction, relieving the advisor from having to do that manually. And so I would say the single most popular place, or the single most popular part of this step 1 tool that we have here, is really uploading statements. And as the advisor kind of clicks through the application, you can see that they can actually drag and drop financial statements into the application itself, and VRGL will go to work immediately extracting data off of those. And so when I say data, we're talking about account level information. So maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 different accounts on a single consolidated report that's being dropped in here. We can see which of those are taxable, which of those are non-taxable. We can dig into positions and transactions, all the way down to lot level holdings for any type of fees and potentially some brief tax analysis as well. And so really what we are doing is we are taking that manual effort of extracting data into an Excel sheet and trying to have an advisor decipher that. We're creating an automatic place or workflow that the advisor can come in, drag and drop those statements, and almost immediately glean all the information that comes off of that 10, 20, 50-page statement. Now, there's other instances as well where we're assisting, I would say, trying to meet the market, where our advisors may not have statements, but maybe they have a list of holdings, or maybe they have an Excel file. And so we give them other options to enter holdings directly into the application, or drag and drop Excel files if they don't have the actual investment statements themselves kind of readily available. And lastly, we can even, an advisor can send an invite to a prospect via a secure link, branded in logos up top, and they can send that directly to that client should they want to upload those statements themselves rather than collect those statements. And so really at the end of the day, step 1 is a catalyst to get us to step 2. And step 2 is really where I would say the analysis and the comparative nature of VRGL really starts to take effect. When we get into step 2 here, really what we're talking about is the analytical engine of VRGL doing comparative analysis of Robert Herman's current portfolio versus a proposed portfolio that we've selected. And again, could be a investment model, could be a benchmark, could be a separately managed account, could contain things like alternatives, or could just be traditional liquid assets. We can take in any type of asset class, any type of investment into consideration as part of these comparative analysis. And then from there, our analytics are really kind of derived into 5 different subjects: performance, risks, diversification, taxes, and fees. And again, this goes down to position level detail, allowing folks to understand, an advisor to understand exactly what every position looks like, leading to things like performance, understanding what the performance of the current portfolio looks like in comparison to the proposed portfolio. And that's actually what these little numbers are beneath each of these pillars, ranging from -5 to +5. And so what VRGL is doing is giving a quick proprietary score to each one of these and saying, hey, the performance of the proposed portfolio, of the current portfolio, is slightly lagging compared to the proposed portfolio, has significantly more risk, worse diversification, and roughly the same fees with a significantly worse tax consequence. And so ultimately, these are guiding points where an advisor can come in and start to drill down if necessary to say, I'd like to better understand where that difference is coming in for performance, where that difference is coming in from risk. And then additionally, there's scenario analysis where we can give advisors the opportunity to say, I want to understand what the current portfolio and the proposed portfolio look like if the S&P goes down 30%, or if rates spike again. And so giving kind of real world analytics, the questions that the prospective clients may be asking or may not be asking in some points, but we want to potentially highlight and bring to the surface. So ultimately, we give the advisor over 200 different analytics across these kind of different sectors here, understanding the difference between tax transitioning, understanding the difference between fees in the current portfolio versus the proposed portfolio, and ultimately allowing the advisor to say, what story do I want to tell, right? Because at the end of the day, statistics are nice, but what we're trying to do in a prospective client phase is we are trying to understand what is going to resonate with that prospect, what is going to give me the best chance of winning this prospect. And ultimately, that's when we come back to the step 3, which is the investment proposal. And so being able to identify which of these statistics, which of the components from the analysis that we want to highlight as part of the proposal, we can then generate a fully white labeled investment proposal, either in PowerPoint or PDF, that has the look and the feel of your firm, and be able to include quantitative and qualitative aspects of an investment proposal. So we can have cover sheets, things like about the team and about the firm, but then also include any of the necessary analytics that you as the advisor would like to pick out of the VRGL kind of analysis tool, and we can push those into a clean white labeled report that really helps you tell that story for that second or third meeting when you're trying to close that client. I'll finish with just some examples about things like disclosures and terms and conditions. So all of those are components that I would say that go into those 3 different unique workflow steps that VRGL is helping to do. And if we zoom out from there, again, we're talking about the prospective client phase at this stage. We're talking about first, second, third, maybe fourth meeting with somebody in an attempt to win that business. And that's where we see kind of the start of this workflow. I'll call it from the top of the funnel. And then I think that feeds really nicely into kind of some of the discussion that we're going to have about Holistiplan next, as we kind of wrap around that circular diagram that we looked at. So Tori, happy to hand it over to you for a second and give you an opportunity. And Tori, you're on mute.
Well, where's Adam Holt's cup when I need it? Shout out to Mr. Holt and his You're on Mute cup. If none of you have seen that before, it is a hilarious joke that he brings to every meeting. But anyways, as we are trying to like come full circle here, we are talking about deliverables. So VRGL brings that prospective client into the funnel. You're able to really prospect out their portfolio management needs. And as you're talking through that, again, one of the items that many advisors are collecting at the beginning of their meetings are their clients' tax returns. And once you have that tax return in place, you're able to upload that into our system to really start having that tax planning conversation with your client. So if you haven't seen Holistiplan before, this is our main dashboard. Our dashboard allows you to quickly see, popular webinar recordings, our product updates, all of that good stuff. But we also allow you to upload a return straight from here. So if you haven't created this client yet, you're able to kind of create it right out of the dashboard, or you can come over to our household section. I'm going to use a household account that I've already created just for the sake of time. So when you have a household created, the only information that we need from you, the advisor, to input is first, last name, date of birth, and state. The date of birth and state aren't required, but are nice to have because there are some age milestones when you're talking about tax planning. So being able to have that age in there is really helpful. And the state, although we don't read state returns, it's nice to have the state in there because we are able to give a few state tax hints based off that federal return. We do know that not all states have state income taxes, but of those states that do, we are able to provide you some state tax hints for them to go over with your client. So here we are on the client's household page. I've already uploaded that return, but I just want to quickly show you, we are able to go back 5 years. We are accepting 2023 returns. We know that we are in tax planning season right now, but we are able to upload up to 5 years back. If you're just starting out, highly recommend you just start with the tax year that you are on. No need to go back and look at what the client had done the previous 5 years. Just start fresh and start with that previous year. So you just hit the year that you'd like to upload and then drag and drop the file for the client. In about 45 seconds, you'll have this tax report populated for your client. This report is fully editable. So again, talking about those deliverables to take home for your clients, you could put your disclosures and disclaimers, your logo, all of that good stuff on here. So again, when they walk out of your office, they've got this really nice report about their tax planning needs, but also when they're going back to look at it, or they go to their tax preparer, your image is on it. So they know, oh, my advisor created this for me, or if the CPA had questions, they know to contact you, the advisor. So again, it's really a nice deliverable for the client to leave your office with, or for you to send it to them if you're doing virtual meetings with your clients. The top of this box is always going to be the key figures. This is just, again, a snapshot of what that return did for the client for the year. I love that this is in dollar values. It hits harder when you talk about dollar values than percentages. Again, a 10% increase, or you're in the 12% tax bracket, doesn't necessarily sound so scary. But when you actually tell the client that specific dollar amount, it kind of has a more impactful hit to them. And you could get a better reaction from the client. So again, this is just a quick overview. And as you dive down deeper into this report, you're going to see line by line of that tax return broken out for the client. We highlight any tax bracket information. We will highlight it for you. So you can see, again, this client falls in the 20% marginal tax rate, what that threshold is for that particular rate, and then where your client lands. We also break down the modified adjusted growth income tier. So we'll list out the opportunities, the limits for each of those opportunities, and if the client is over and under, and if you hover over it, you'll be able to see the dollar value of what your client had for that particular income tier. As you're moving forward through this, note that you are able to move these boxes. You can hide them if you didn't want to have a conversation about it with your client. Again, we want to make this interactive and a really nice flow for you and your clients. Not every advisor has the same way to present. So we want to make sure that this fits into your presenting workflow. As you can see, we also tackle the Medicare Part B and D premiums, Schedule D cap gains and losses. I always point out Schedule B income sources. This is kind of like a treasure chest for any advisor. An example that I will give time and time again is when I first started at Holistiplan over 2 years ago, I uploaded my own tax return, and there was actually a Fidelity account in there of an old 401k from a previous job that I had completely forgotten about, and it had just been sitting unmanaged. So we were able to find that account and get it under management with my advisor. But I had no idea, again, I don't look at each line on my return every year. I just kind of hope and pray that my tax preparer has done really great for me and pay what I need to do and move on with my life. So at the bottom of this is where that tax planning piece really, really starts. So these are those observations. My observations are going to be different than Phil's, and it's going to be different than Allison's. Not only do we all live in different states, but we all have different tax needs and wants, and our returns are all different. So these observations are not going to look the same for every client. You're able to edit these. So if you wanted to put some notes that you went over this and what you're going to do, you can hide them if you didn't want to go over this one with your client for whatever particular reason. But as you're going through these and you're making notes, this is where you're going to start seeing that the opportunities come up on the tax planning needs. So the second half of our platform is our scenario analysis piece. So think of this piece as your e-monies of the world, where you're going in and you're building out different portfolio styles for your client, and you're building out an ESG portfolio, you're building a conservative portfolio, building out an aggressive portfolio. That's exactly what you're doing here in scenario analysis, but you're building it out for their tax planning needs, right? You want to model out maybe a Roth conversion for this client. Maybe this client is moving from one state to another. I moved from California to Texas, so I went from one state to having state income taxes to no state income taxes. You can model something as easy as getting married and having a baby. Maybe there's a client wants to have a conversation around charitable giving. This is where you're going to model out all those different scenarios for your client. So I have here, this first scenario is always going to be the tax year that you have the latest tax year that you have uploaded. I've started out the next scenario here on a Roth conversion. I did want to point out this really, I think it's an incredible feature. The Solve for Max button will actually tell you, the advisor, how much you have left in the particular tax bracket that your client is in until they will bump into the next bracket. So this client has $129,000 until they move into the next bracket. So we've got that much money to quote unquote play with, right? To figure out what we want to do in tax planning need before that client moves into a new bracket. So this client wanted to know what a Roth conversion could look like for them. So we come down to our Roth conversion worksheet. We can put in $100,000. We also have these really great explainers. So again, if the client wants to understand more about what a Roth conversion does, how each dollar is looked at, this Roth explainer will help you have that more in-depth conversation for them. So now we can close that out. The Roth conversion is in there. You can come back up to this Solve for Max button and show the client you took advantage of a $100,000 Roth conversion and you're still within the tax bracket that you are already in. So again, great conversations to have with your clients to just help them understand, what could they be doing better for their tax planning needs. Our scenario recipes is our most frequently asked questions. How do I model X? So maybe they wanted a donor advice fund. You would find that in the recipe cards. And follow these instructions here on the right and build it out here on the left. We're able to add up to 1,000 scenarios, and I'm sure most of you are chuckling, why would I build 1,000 scenarios for my clients? We just wanted you to have the ability to build as many as you needed, so you don't feel like you are hindered in a matter of building out one to three or whatever the case may be. You've got basically an unlimited amount. I always love to show this. You're able to pop these windows open real quick to show like the differences on what you've been building out for the client. So I always think this is a great thing, especially if you're trying to build out, state, they're moving, they're not going to have state income taxes anymore, or they're getting married or that kind of thing. You'll see those those changes between scenario 1 and scenario 2. So that allows you to, again, have that conversation of the differences between what they had going for the previous year and what they could have for the following years. As I mentioned, all of this is printable. You're able to create this into a PDF to send home with your client. They can take this home and show their tax prepared so they understand what you are planning for. But also too, it's another layer when you are walking out the door with the client. You've already got that proposal from VRGL. You've got our tax planning tax report from Holistiplan. And then that last kind of big step that you're going to go through with your client is that asset map, right? So you're going to be able to really show them and lay out their investment accounts in a really great manner. So Allison is up next.
Can you see my screen okay, Tori?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk about asset map. So I'm taking that kind of third piece of the funnel we're talking about here, and our kind of timeline, or just that ongoing communication with the client. So asset map, as you can see, and I'm going to focus on a couple of our features today. If you're looking for something in depth on kind of all of our solution, we're more than happy to chat with you. But today I'm really going to focus on picturing this with you in a meeting, talking about now that we've done this great work, we've converted our client, we understand more about their investment needs through VRGL, we've gone through tax with Holistiplan. What are we going to do with them ongoing to make sure that everything's up to date, everything is in order, there aren't changes that might need to be proposed. Because as you can imagine, when you pop this up, you can see a lot of family members that are important to this client. And not every family looks the same. We all know that. Tori mentioned that as far as, the tax planning goes. Her return is going to be different than mine, then it will be different than Phil's. And the same thing goes with your asset map. So, even within your book of business, you have clients who are, pretty simple. They have a couple of incomes. They have, a small family. And you might have other clients that have 4 businesses and, many family members that might depend on them financially, or, that might be included in their financial life. And one of my favorite things about asset map is the ability to make it relevant for every single family situation. So if you look at this one, for instance, you've got Tim and Christine, the client and spouse, but we also see that there's a special needs trust set up. There is a printing company. We've got a business partner. Even grandma is listed at the top of this asset map report. And what that's letting the advisor know is, this family's got some complexity. They have a business interest that's important to them. Maybe their son Joshua might have special needs. That's something I might want to bring up in the meeting. One of our, best, scenarios at Asset Map when working with clients and advisors, and how we support it, is really making that conversation sing, really make it valuable right from the start. So once they become your client, or, even doing some prospecting in Asset Map, you're able to get to some really valuable conversation, even in that first meeting, as opposed to it taking, a bunch of meetings to build that relationship, because it's really clear that you understand what they have going on. You're going to see that there is some income over on the left-hand side specific to Tim in this case. Christine's items that are individually held are listed on the right. You've got insurance up at the top, and any kind of joint assets and liabilities down at the bottom. And it's, set up this way in order to, again, keep that conversation going. You as the advisor understand exactly how to reference something when you're meeting with your clients. And then, of course, within that family, it's going to change a little bit. What tends to automatically happen, and I mentioned this before, is the client and spouse are going to start thinking, wow, okay, this really does represent my life. This is really, really close. However, maybe things stand out to them, like, well, my spouse is still a teacher, but, she recently became assistant principal. And when you're looking at the asset map report, you're going to be able to, on the fly, really quickly make those changes. And the client's going to open up and talk to you about what they've got going on, using this as a really easy to understand visual reference point. And it's pretty incredible what you can hear, you start to see happening. And the stories we hear all the time are pretty nice, just to, kind of reiterate how we feel that the asset map report tends to make this happen. So you're going to notice, and I'm going to talk about one of our recent features that we launched that I just think is incredible, called our drafts, asset map drafts. And, there's probably a couple things, if you're really taking a look at this report, that might be standing out to you that might need to be adjusted. Things like, We've got an inactive 401k over on the left-hand side. Tori even brought that up in her part. How many of us have either had that happen to us or you talk to your clients about a 401k that you've left somewhere and you almost forgot it existed? It's crazy that it happens, but it happens all the time. So we've got in this case, $110,000 inactive 401k over the left-hand side that Tim owns. There's a brokerage account over on the left-hand side as well at the bottom that's creeping up on $500,000 and it's individually held. And we see even over on the right-hand side for our spouse, Christine, in this case, that she's got a frozen SEP IRA. I bet you there's some tax implications with that frozen SEP IRA that they're not thinking about as the client and spouse. So the advisor gets the insight into exactly what's important for this family. And when they meet with the family, whether that be over Zoom or on a big screen in the office, they're able to really easily kind of deliver that information and talk about things that might need to be changed. Phil had mentioned in his opening, and AssetMap feels strongly in, doing webinars like this with partners who are experts in things like investment and tax. AssetMap itself is not trying to become, your end-all be-all tax planning software or your investment planning software. So we love partnering with companies like VRGL and Holistiplan in taking that uncovering that you're doing in the AssetMap, and then, in that life cycle, that circle that we're talking about, say, 6 months later, we've looked at our AssetMap report, and it looks like we might want to make a bit of a change, especially let's use the, SEP IRA as an example. So I'm going to switch to the next screen, and you're going to see what you can do in AssetMap to kind of facilitate that conversation. Now within drafts, you'll now see there's a watermark behind the scenes. There's, kind of some pluses, some minuses, some trash can icons listed on those AssetMap boxes. And the idea here is you can come up with an AssetMap draft. You're basically copying the AssetMap you have and making a couple of suggestions that might be really valuable for your client to make without it actually impacting the live AssetMap report. So you can pop into drafts and say, again, let's use the IRA as an example. You can now see on the right-hand side, it says move to Roth IRA. You've got a couple of clients in their early 50s really optimizing tax if you get it out of that frozen IRA and move it over into the Roth IRA. So that's a suggestion we're going to make with them in our next meeting before we make it live in the AssetMap. And you can also see that brokerage account that I referenced over on the left-hand side that was just owned by Tim in that case is now loaded up under a joint asset. So we're going to suggest that they change the ownership on that brokerage account and update that a bit as well. You can see a few other things are crossed out and moved around, but the idea here is, let's talk about what's really going to improve this, kind of plan. What can we kind of send back as far as, digging in deeper with investments to VRGL? What can we then recommend that our client do in Holistiplan to improve their taxes and their implications with tax for, a frozen IRA, or certainly that inactive 401k. So again, we really love being able to use the AssetMap as that kind of uncovering technology to open up the conversation, find out what's most important to folks, and potentially even refer them to some of the best software out there that are more niche on a certain topic. And we really see that becoming extremely successful. So I used an investment, draft as an example, but of course you could do this with insurance as well. This one, up at the top is focusing on some insurance changes, which is always nice as well. Something else I want to touch on before we talk about deliverables in AssetMap, and I feel very strongly about AssetMap deliverables, and there's a new one to share with you today as well, is again what Phil said, have your tech look like you, have it branded to your firm, have it represent who you are. We know these days that a lot of folks are working in small teams. They have a really kind of holistic approach in their firm that everybody is working with the same clients and giving them the best support out there. So, you might be Main Street Financial, you want your maybe branded colors right on the AssetMap questionnaire. All of these things that are so important to make it a seamless experience with your clients, even if it is, a few different technology tools that you've decided to implement, you can really make it nice. And in that kind of life cycle that we're talking about, have it seem very seamless to the end client when it comes to your reporting and your websites that they're accessing. So just in the last 6 months, AssetMap, based on really what Phil said and a need for customization and branding, has made a lot of really exciting changes to our software to make sure it looks exactly like what you would like it to look like at your firm. We talk a lot about, especially around deliverables, delivering focus, not files. That's what we like to say. So, the days of the 80-page reports are, we like to think are a bit behind us. An interesting story that Adam, our CEO, tells is, he's been to some pretty high-end client meetings over his career as an advisor before he started Asset Map, or in the beginning of when he started Asset Map. And, some of the most complex, really impressive reports, leather bound, really, really, created with the utmost intention, are given to, these super high net worth clients that they were working with. And so many times at the end of these meetings, both for Adam and many of the firms that we work with, the client says, I just want to take my asset map home because I understand it. It's easy for me to review with my spouse who might not have been able to make it to the meeting. And it's something we can reference in between time together to make sure everything's, on track, and let us know what we might need to discuss with you the next time we're in a meeting. And before I open it up to questions with the whole group, we have a client portal now. I don't know if everybody knows about that, but I figured I'd take the opportunity in a deliverable meeting to talk about the fact that over the years, you can imagine we've gotten a lot of requests to have the clients be able to access their asset map virtually. So of course, it's great to be able to share it in a PDF printable version. Clients really still love that. They love to draw right on the asset map itself in paper format. But giving the clients the ability to log in on their own whenever they like, access, to maybe beneficiaries or power of attorneys as possible as well, to see it in a digital format, see any of the reports that you as the advisor have decided to share with them. Of course, it's up to you. And see it whenever they like. Maybe they have a meeting coming up to buy a new house and they'd like to share it with their mortgage agent. There's so many different things that you can use that kind of full view of a client's assets, liabilities, and entire household situation at a glance. So that's now available to folks that are using Asset Map. You can provide that to your clients. And it's just our first phase. There's going to be additional phases coming where they might be able to have some input as well on their client portal, and potentially additional functionality down the road. But it's off to a great start, and we have folks authenticating it all the time and absolutely loving the fact that they can pop up their asset map on their own. So guys, you want to take some questions?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
And so
Yeah.
I know there were a few questions just kind of off the bat about how to get in contact with us or how to book demos in particular. And then I think there was also one about distributing some of the materials from today. So some of our information is up here on the screen, but I think also as a, Tori, do you want to just maybe quick mention about how folks can access us?
Yeah, so if you wanted to connect with Holistiplan, info@holistiplan.com. Again, it's up here on the screen. You can also connect with me through LinkedIn or Twitter or X or whatever we're calling that platform. At Tori Hoppy is my handle for both. Try to keep it real simple because the spelling on my name is not so simple. So you can find me there at both spots. But yes, if you want, info@holistiplan.com. And then Allison's at hello@asset-map.com. And then Phil's sales@VRGLwealth.com.
Yeah, and same goes for me, and we're going to take questions here in a second. I see a whole bunch, which is great. But I think I speak for all three of us that we'd be happy to chat with you on social media, connect with us on LinkedIn and Twitter. And this has been amazing, and I'm excited to get to some questions. I see a bunch coming in. A couple, I'll just kick it off because I see a whole bunch for Asset Map around data. So to answer your question about that, we really have three different ways to get data into Asset Map. Honestly, the traditional way of kind of chatting back and forth and adding it during the meeting is some of our most popular still because we have really quick and easy data entry. But a jump off point that I recommend always is, we have up to 15 different integrations that are going to take data that you have somewhere else, places like Nitrogen, Schwab, Orion, Money Guide, a whole host of places that you could then take all the data that you've spent time adding in or aggregating in and pre-populating an asset map. So I don't want you to be scared off in any sense by data entry in asset map. alone, but we have a multitude of integrations that are going to take care of a good chunk of that for you. And also a direct client fact finder that we're getting 70, I think, % results back with folks actually pre-building their own asset map for you before they come into a meeting. So our team is happy to cover that with you and give you the best practices. But you know, kind of those 3 ways to get data in, and certainly integrations, you can find them on our website, are going to be a huge time saver for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then we had
yeah, go ahead, Tori.
Oh, sorry. We had an interesting question on cost. Is this one plan or 3? Give us a breakdown. So we are 3 separate companies, so that you would have 3 separate subscriptions for each. So dependent on, you know, your wants and needs, that would be for the pricing, but we are 3 separate platforms. I'm glad that it looked like we were one seamless platform, because that's kind of the idea, right? We want you to show that you could seamlessly use 3 technologies without a full integration between the 3 platforms, to get this really great comprehensive deliverable for your client. But we are 3 separate companies.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tori. A couple from a little earlier, just I believe these were directed towards Virgil. One question was about kind of visibility and tabs, I think, within the application. For example, can you, this performance is something I don't want to see or I'm not interested in, can I have the option to hide it? Short answer is yes, absolutely. And what's great is not only can we kind of configure the application internally to either expose or hide something, at the end of the day, it's also an advisor tool. And so anything that you want to surface or bring to bear to your end client, to your prospective client, you can choose exactly what you do want to bring out of Virgil versus what you want to leave back in Virgil. And so it's all about, again, I think kind of reinforcing that story that you're interested in telling. If performance is not part of that story, and risk or diversification are instead, or fees, you can surface that instead. And so I hope that answers that question. There was one other about how do we choose the proposed allocation for a client? And that's really simple. Advisors can build the investment model in which they choose as part of that selection process. And so when an advisor is going in there and comparing the current portfolio, how do they figure out which proposed portfolio to compare it to? That's really as simple as a drop-down list. And so our team kind of helps build some of those upon the initial implementation and onboarding, but then we make it easy enough for advisors themselves to maintain that going forward. And then maybe one more while I'm up at plate here. There was a question about vendors through LPL, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the other vendors, so I think it may be easiest probably for us to answer those individually. And so more than happy to kind of reach out and talk about LPL affinity program or any other kind of approved vendor lists that either one of us are on or any of us are on.
Yeah, and Jim asked us, this is always a fun question to get. For my entire career, my BD has made sure that we do not give tax advice. How are you combating that? We are not giving any tax advice. We're just doing tax planning, right? So we're not saying, you know, we do not file the returns. We do not do any of the advice needed for that. Jim, I'd be happy to hear what BD you're working with. We have about 12 of the top 15 broker dealers approved for our software. So hopefully you fall in one of those 12 that have shown that they are wanting to take tax planning on for their broker dealer. So but yeah, we are only tax planning. So just like you're planning different portfolio management for your client, we're just building out the different tax planning needs. So happy to connect offline with you if you want. Shoot me a DM or an email and we'll get that tackled for you.
I'll grab one. There's a couple coming into Asset Map about tracking Asset Map reports. We do have the ability to basically allow for you to have unlimited report history, which has really been a popular add-on that we embarked on, I don't know, maybe a little over a year ago, was the ability to make sure you can always reference back, you know, different points in time of someone's Asset Map and go back and, you know, if it's annual, you know, you want to have something memorialized for them every time they come in the office. you just go ahead and save that PDF, and within the report history, you're able to access that, forever. So great question that's come up a couple of times, because of course the asset map is kind of a living and breathing thing, because as the client's household needs change, as their investments change, their tax needs, all of the above, absolutely, you might want to have kind of that locked down version of it, so that of course that's a capability, and our team will happily walk you through how that works. I've also answered a couple of other questions that would be in kind of that answered category, but any other interesting ones you all want to tackle?
Yeah, we get it. We've gotten it a few times. Basically, again, talking about personal information being shared, the security on the portal. So I know, again, when you're talking about someone's tax return, there is a lot of PII information on there. Holistiplan has the ability for you to redactify that information, so you can black it out so it doesn't come over at all. But we also have a auto delete function. So if you do not want the tax return stored at all in our system, you enable your auto delete, and as soon as the system reads that, it auto deletes that account in. We also don't actually pull any of that PII information over. So although it is there on the return, our system does not grab that information. So that's kind of how our system tackles security. I know, again, Asset Map and VRGL are on the same page when it comes to PII information. But yeah, I saw quite a few people ask about vaults
I could
and
touch on that
PII
quickly, and
information.
then I'll touch on it quickly and pass to Phil as well. It's a great question. I do all of our compliance intake for Asset Map, and we have a CISO and a whole team that supports, making sure the system is safe and secure. We have plenty of documentation I could share on that too, if you have individual questions that would be interesting for you to know or file away for your firm. But to Tori's point, we handle everything, very specifically. Asset Map has pretty low PII actually overall, no account numbers, no social security numbers. You can even round off values if you want to, because again, for us, the conversation is really the value in Asset Map. It's not, getting down to the dollar amount necessarily all the time, but, making sure that decisions are being made that are appropriate for your client. And in that case, we can keep the PII pretty low, but we have all of those items to help support you and make sure you're comfortable with the safety and security of the system.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really great questions here, all kind of centered around the same thing, which is kind of data flow, and talking about how data potentially flows from one of our applications to the other. And I can kind of start on that, call it from the top of funnel, when we're talking about from a VRGL perspective. And so when we really think about data, in particular, that data that we are capturing off of prospective clients' investment statements, any of that data, after it's been extracted by VRGL into the application, can become immediately exportable and then sent to really any downstream system. So at the end of the day, VRGL is trying to facilitate really an agnostic look and feel of how you want to get data to anything from Holistiplan and Asset Map, or any of the other kind of financial planning tools that you may have in your tech stack today. And so I'd be more than happy to kind of talk about how some of that sourcing data that we start by collecting can be disseminated down to others. But those are a couple of really great questions. Thanks for those.
Yeah, and I answered a couple questions live about Asset Map integrations. If you go to Asset Map's website and go to product and integrations, it will list out all of our existing current integrations that, again, you can, kind of get a vast amount of your Asset Map created. To Phil's point, we also do have an uploader that could take kind of files that could come from Holistiplan, from VRGL, from really almost any technology platform, and populate an Asset Map report. So we have a multitude of solutions to make sure it's pretty seamless for you all. And again, I hate to keep shouting out my team, but Asset Map has a pretty incredible training and support team that, really kind of makes it easy for you to decide what path is right for you as far as getting data entered in and what you might want to do with it. So we're happy to help you with that. But to Phil's point, we can accept files that he's talking about exporting. So that's always nice.
Absolutely. And I'll cherry pick one last one here because I thought it was a good one. And that's the difference, I think, from VRGL about paper statements versus electronic statements. And so ultimately, I would say that our clients see data coming to them in statement form, electronically, paper, in the back of Iron Mountain bankers boxes. We've seen just about everything. And so ultimately, advisors can kind of key things in if they have a short list that's written on a coffee stained napkin, or they can take a nice, beautiful digital copy and drop that straight into the application. So really, any type of data source, any type of source that you have, whether that's a hard document or a soft document, VRGL can digest that through the application. So just wanted to make that clear, but thanks for the question.
Well, we appreciate everyone for joining us today. We had such a great time. Thank you, Phil and Allison, for joining me. I always love not only to connect with you both, but to kind of show off what our companies are doing in the space. I think we are making some great headway for advisors on their tech stack. So appreciate you both for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tori, and thanks for hosting this. And good luck to your bracket.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Thanks so much,
Tori.
everyone.
Bye. Bye, Phil.
Bye.